Okay, we are live. Welcome, guys, to a discussion about the moon landing in 1969. Now, before I bring the guys in here, I always found it very strange, the whole moon landing thing. I remember we covered it in school. There was a full chapter about the moon landing. And I always found it odd that it happened so long ago, and yet we weren't hearing about more people landing on the moon. So it was kind of like, we've done that, let's move on. And I thought with technology getting better that, perhaps the moon would eventually be inhabited. But no, we just don't hear anything about it at all now. So I'm coming into this as an ignoramus. I watched a few documentaries about 20 years ago, and I remember, hearing things about certain shadows and flag fluttering, and there's no wind or something on the moon. I was hearing lots of things, and I really didn't know. But I'm glad tonight, this evening, this afternoon, their time, to bring in Blackbird9, Alfred, Schaefer, and also Brizer is here as well. So I'll bring Brizer in a second as well. So I would start off with Blackbird9. Give us your impressions of the moon landings, maybe certain inconsistencies you've come across. And before I do so, I'll just say that this is a sacred cow. The moon landing in 1969 is a sacred cow. And many people in these circles, when you cast doubts on the moon landing, they will very quickly vilify you. Because the idea that we really didn't go to the moon, that seems to really piss them off. And they might even unfriend you if you say this. Now, I ran a little poll on Twitter. I ran it yesterday, it finished today. And I asked people to retweet it so we would get more votes. But I had the feeling that many people weren't going to retweet it because the idea that we didn't go to the moon seems completely illogical to them. It's like saying that water isn't wet. And therefore, they didn't bother retweeting it because they think it's a load of nonsense. Of course we landed on the moon. I want to get my head examined. Right. So, Blackbird, on to you.
Yes, and for some of this, this is a bigger sacred cow than for others. For people not familiar with my work, my father was one of those people who literally dropped a plow in a field after Pearl Harbor and joined the military, lied about his age, went in underage, and fought World War II, stayed in the military, moved from the Navy to the Army Air Corps, which became the Air Force, and from there worked in the early stages of the U.S. space program. And, one of the big things was I was actually born at Holloman Air Force Base in White Sands, New Mexico, near Alamogordo, New Mexico. One of those test bases out in the middle of the desert that just like the film Capricorn 1, that's where I was born while my father was working on the Mercury project. And one of his jobs was to train or assist in the training of the space chimps, especially Ham and Enos. And he was actually part of the honor guard who presented Ham, the hero space chimp, to President Johnson at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., before Ham was moved to the Asheboro Zoo in North Carolina and then lived a ripe old age for a chimpanzee. And so even after my father retired from the Air Force and we moved back to our homeland, North Carolina, he was, just a big proponent of the space program. I remember he would wake us up like 3 o'clock in the morning so we could watch the various moon shots of the Apollo program. And that, on the Zenith TV, I saw us go to the moon, right? So that, my Zenith TV would never lie to me. And especially my father, who was the military hero and part of the space program, that I could never challenge that. And coming into the truth movement, I've always, I was always the person questioning everything and looking at the weird science parts of things. Uh, but 9/11 was the big, your life just completely changed. And as more and more things came up, with me, 9/11 was about magic cell phone calls that are physically impossible and magic buildings collapsing at free speed that is physically impossible. And then people started saying, well, 9/11 truthers are worse than Holocaust deniers. And it's like, well, maybe we should go back and look at Holocaust denial. And that was about the time that Sylvia Stoltz was being put in prison for defending Ernst Zundel. And I'm like, well, this is just insane. And that's when I found Denier Bud videos, right? And the whole the coda and everything that just really made me think of, wow, this is physically impossible, just like 9/11 was. Oh my gosh, Cass Sunstein was right. We are just Holocaust deniers are just like 9/11 truthers. And then the next one, which was really hard, was, did we indeed go to the moon? And I remember when I was first getting familiar with my good friend, Mr. Alfred Schaefer, one half of those darn Schaefer kids that I admire so much. I remember when he went to his bit about and the moon landings, and I was just like, oh my God, he's one of those, right? And it's like, and that was one of the things in counterintelligence operations is the person that goes out and deliberately poisons the well with something radical, that's the thing. It's like, oh my God, he's not doing that. But then it was like, well, maybe, he's right about everything else. And I totally adore him and his sister because they've been right about pretty much else, despite me having to eat those chunky bits of their hate facts and, reality. And just the more I dug into it, the more I realized that, there are boundaries. And this is one of the things, when you look at the triumph of, the Wright brothers in North Carolina, proving everybody wrong by having a heavier than air aircraft, that everybody thought that was physically impossible. And then it's like, well, the sound barrier, let's see if we can break the sound barrier. Sure enough, we broke the sound barrier with the X1. And then the idea of, well, can we actually use von Braun's technology to break Newton's law of gravity and actually leave the gravity well of the planet? Can we break that barrier? And then the next one was, can we break the barrier of the Van Allen radiation belt? So it's all of these boundaries that, can we get there? Can we go past there? And to think that you have done this great accomplishment, that breaking the Van Allen belt, actually going to the moon, and that was a hard one to give up. And like you said, I was actually accepted at university in aerospace engineering originally before I transferred my major, but that was when we still thought that we're going to have space colonies, we're going to have a base on the moon and my generation's going to build it. And, we're going to have space colonies and we're going to go to the various planets and, the sky's the limit. And then you got into, I'll never forget meeting with my Jewish advisor for the first time there at North Kakalaki State University and just basically putting me straight that the space program is dead and aerospace engineering now means weapon systems. We supply engineers to places like Rancor and things like that, that is just really, crushing this young Gentile's dreams of following his father's footsteps, etc. And so, this was definitely a hard topic for many of us that are invested in it, that, we were part of that system, and to question it and face the slings and arrows of people who haven't quite made it to that red pill yet, that you are shunned if you say the U.S. did not accomplish this. And so, but you also get shunned if you try to tell the truth about 9/11 or the Holocaust. So anyway, that's kind of my opening statement. So back to you.
Yeah, there's a very common saying, reach for the stars. And a lot of people do believe that we landed on the moon. So it upsets them if you question it at all. So I'll bring in Alfred now. Alfred, how did you become interested in the whole moon landing thing? And what have you noticed in your research?
Well, I was 14 years old when Neil Armstrong did his studio moon landing, and for me, it was beyond imagination that anybody would have an interest in lying to us. So pervasively, like everywhere was telling us the same story. Why would anybody lie about something like that? So there was no reason to not believe it as it was happening. And that became part of my identity. I mean, as a 14-year-old, as a young teenager kind of thing, how I'd look up at the moon and my chest would swell up. We were up there, and it was just a feeling of pride. It became a part of my identity. It became, we were so much better than those evil communists, those Soviets and so forth. And then, that was part of my identity all the way up till about 2014 or so, when I was really getting into beginning to understand more and more what 9/11 was, and people started pointing out the moon landing to me, and I actually behaved in a not in a very noble way. I tell them to buzz off with this don't bother me with that, because it was like they were offending my religion kind of thing. It was my identity. And then I says, just a minute, why don't you just take the time and just look at the evidence that you can find and just look at it and logically. And I did that. And then it didn't take long at all. And I realized, oh my God, did they ever pull the wool over our eyes on that? And it was so liberating to get over it, because then I was free to just think logically. And also the question arose in my mind, what was the agenda or the purpose of doing that? And it just helps. It helps a great deal to put all the big pieces together, which is vital now at this point in our human history, to understand what is the purpose of these different lies. And a couple of the big reasons for that big lie was that John F. Kennedy had promised us that we would go to the moon, and then after the eternal enemy of humankind, the money lenders that you are not allowed to criticize or talk about, after they had killed John F. Kennedy, then they had Johnson dead set in their pocket. And so he helped them, carry out this moon landing nonsense. And it helped us to sort of overcome the trauma of the loss of John F. Kennedy. I mean, they had to take out John F. Kennedy because he was starting to understand too much of what he was not supposed to understand. And so by taking him out, the eternal enemies of mankind could continue with all the program points that they saw threatened with John F. Kennedy. And they helped us overcome the trauma of his loss. And this moon landing also gave us all kinds of, we could dream of going to Mars, setting up colonies up there and all these, silly fantasy things. Mankind has never left low Earth orbit, so it's always this mixture of lies and fiction. And and right now, it's like Blackbird9 said, somebody denying the moon landing is like the Holocaust deniers kind of thing. Well, all of these things are just lies, lies, lies. And this led these people to say, well, they believe the Holocaust, they believe the moon landing, they will believe corona snakes and get their vaccinations. So now these lies have reached a point where we are being mass genocided, and we either, we have such a short period of time left to come to grips with reality, come to our senses, and do whatever it takes to resolve this problem. And at this point, I also want to say that some of our best accomplices in resolving this conflict, we can expect them actually to come from the enemy's quarters, kind of thing, because they have a deep understanding of this thing. I mean, I've had people making the best contributions, like helping me along, who have grown up, they grew up in the synagogues and they really understood the utter deadly nonsense that they are being taught there, how they are being indoctrinated, and want to free themselves and help us also to free us of this, I call it a program error in our organized structures. Once we're no longer hunters gatherers in the woods, we have to have methods of dealing with each other, and this subject of money is vital in any higher population. If you can't like trade the deer that you shot or killed for a chair or something like that, the guy who's the carpenter, we have a placeholder for real value, and that is money. And ever since we have this placeholder for real value, which we call money, these people, which normally known as Jews, have designed their own operating system, their own code of conduct or behavioral codex, to be able to trick and manipulate our beliefs, our what's going on, to get their hands on the money. And with the money, they control us and the whole planet, basically. And this is right now we're at a point where we either get it right, remedy ourselves from this bad code, or we all go down. That's the point we're at right now. So I'll leave it at that right now.
Thanks for that, Alfred. And now I'll bring on Brizer. So Brizer, how did you get into this whole moon landing? Is it a hoax? Is it not?
Yeah. Good evening, gentlemen. Alfred, good to hear you again, and hopefully we'll talk again maybe afterwards. Good to talk to you again. Again, like Alfred, I remember in 1969, I was 7 years old, and we saw this all on TV. These guys landing on the moon, and how amazing it was. I remember my father bringing me outside, and it was late at night. It was nighttime anyway, and it was a beautiful big full moon in the sky. He says, "Look, son, we went up there. There's men up there walking on there," and I was like, "Wow, this is incredible," So, and again, when you think about it, it's such, if we were able to do such a thing, it would be an incredible achievement to be able to do something like that, So I can understand why people totally buy into this and believe it, because it's an amazing thing that we can do. Like humanity, isn't it incredible, the things we can do? And we can actually go out there into outer space and land on the moon, and then we start at the moon, and then we'll go wherever. We'll go to Mars, we'll go to Jupiter, we'll go wherever. It was kind of like this whole idea of great hope and opportunity for that mankind is really evolving here, and the world, is it a wonderful time to be alive? But what really got me questioning was, I remember I was in the States back in the mid-'80s, and I was in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian, and they actually had, they brought up the actual, it wasn't the original, obviously, but it was the exact replica of the lunar module that landed on the moon, and the capsule that they came down through the atmosphere and landed. And And I looked at this, and it was like, it was made of tinfoil and bits of rope and bits of plastic and bits of things. It was something like a 10 or 11-year-old kid would make, a couple of kids coming together and building something like this. And it kind of reminded me of again, when I was a kid, we used to make these go-karts where we get a couple of planks of wood, get a couple of wheels, stick them on, a bit of rope as a steering wheel, and we'd fly around the place, and it was great fun. That's what it kind of reminded me of. And then the capsule that they allegedly came back in on was like it was like a tin can. I said, how could 3 grown men even fit in there? So that's, and I asked that question. I said, so if you're going to the moon now, you would go in that? And I said, oh yeah, oh yeah, this is what we'd use. And I just went, nah, sorry, I didn't buy it. I just no, something's very wrong here. But then again, I kind of just left it at that, and it didn't bother me too much. And it's only as time went on, and then I started watching some videos about the moon landings. And another thing that I always questioned was when Neil Armstrong, allegedly the first man to step on the moon, I was asked the question, who was filming him? And the answer would come back, oh, there was cameras on the side of the spacecraft. There was cameras there. I said, no, this looked like there was someone standing back a bit and was filming him coming out. And then, how they had this thing called a moon buggy where they were driving around, like a go-kart, on the moon, having a great time. And I was thinking, well, how the hell did they manage to get that up there? That doesn't make sense. So, that was my first kind of journey into what we call the conspiracy theories. I for quite a long time, I was very skeptical about these moon landings. But again, the lie has to continue. They keep pushing it out there. Oh, we went to the moon. Oh, yes, we'll conquer space. We'll do all these wonderful things. And everyone believed in it. Everybody believed in it. And if I asked these questions, I was like, wait, how dare you? Of course we went to the moon. Like, it's an incredible achievement. How can you say something like that? It was a hoax. And I just said, well, I didn't even say it was a hoax. I just said, I don't buy it. It doesn't seem real to me. And then, as time goes on, then, we looked into, say, 9/11. Again, it took me a few years to get my head around that one, but I got there eventually. And then going into the whole Holocaust thing, I was looking at that, and then took me a while to get my head around that one. And then looking at all these different events, so-called huge events, whether they're great achievements or things that happen in wartime or whatever. And I really started questioning all of this. I'm thinking, how real is this? What are we being really told here? And I'm now totally 100%, I have concluded to myself that pretty much everything that we have been told about pretty much everything is complete and utter bullshit. And that's where I stand right now. So, and I think it's a good place for people to start to, if they're exploring these things and questioning these things, the moon landings is a very good place to start, because as before we just did the review of Capricorn 1, in that movie, it shows you how simple it is to fake something like this. It is very easy, and they showed you in that movie how to do it. And the fact that movie came out in the mid-70s, which was not a few years after the whole Apollo missions, was quite telling. And so, once you get into that and you realize, well, they lied to us about that. And again, as Alfred said, like, why would they lie to us about something like this? Because this is a major achievement. We should be celebrating this. But it wasn't about that. It was about, as I said, back then in the late 60s, the Vietnam War was raging, the Cold War was going on. they needed a distraction. They needed people to go, oh, look, take your eyes off that and look at this. And everybody was awestruck about this. Isn't this incredible? This is amazing. And that's what it is about. It's lies, distractions. Don't go there. Don't question this, whatever you do, because this is a huge achievement by mankind, and you should be grateful. And when you really sit back and look at it, the whole thing was a cold crock of bullshit, basically, all of it. And so we're now at a point now in 2024 where a lot of people are waking up to a lot of these scams and these hoaxes. And the big one, of course, is in the last few years. We've talked about it a lot, where you have to be pretty dumbed not to understand that this was a major psyop played on 85, probably 90% of the world population fell for this, just like the moon landings. Probably the moon landing, probably everybody back then believed in the moon landings, but it was the same thing, and people fell for it again. I think it's like, do people not learn their lessons here? You know, so I would say to people, if you still believe that we went to the moon, have a look at that movie Capricorn 1, and you will see how they can pull this off. And it's so easy. And another movie to watch is Wag the Dog, where they show you how they can manufacture a crisis and get people to go along so they can continue their agenda. Because at the end of the day, the lie, it's all about the lie. Forget about the truth. It's all lies. This whole world is based on lies and deception. And there's a certain group of people, we won't bring it up here, who are very good at doing that. And we're all very well aware of that. And they keep pushing that lie. But the lies are now beginning to unravel, and which they always do. And people are beginning to see the truth now. And so, yeah, I think this is a great time to be here. And I mean, I don't know how it's all going to end up or whatever, but more and more people are looking into things now and questioning and beginning to realize, like, this is a load of nonsense. And we're going to call these people out eventually. They will get their comeuppance eventually. I don't know when, but it's going to come. It's happening. And you can see it now because they're scrambling to do everything. Instead of admitting that, okay, we were wrong on this or we were a bit wrong on that, they're actually doubling down or tripling down even. And they're digging a deeper hole for themselves. So this is a great time to be alive because I can't wait to see these people go down when it happens. So I'll pass it back.
Thanks for that, Brizer. Yeah, we did a review of Capricorn 1, and it'll be uploaded in a few days. It was a very good movie, I thought, and Brizer recommended it to me. Getting back to, just this pandemic psyop, like, there is a lot coming out at the moment, and I heard the other day about Fauci. There were headlines saying that he just made up the rules, the social distancing, the masks. He just made it up. And unfortunately, a lot of people just see that and carry on and say, oh, well. And these are people who are probably up to the gills in certain chemicals in their bloodstreams. So I get back to this moon landing. I wasn't around in the 60s, but I can imagine by all the sci-fi books that came out in the 50s and 60s, the movies. I think A Space Odyssey came out in 1968, so a year before the moon landings. So there would have been a lot of euphoria, a lot of positivism, where we're really doing it. Science is unlocking all the secrets of existence. We're conquering new territories. It's a great time to be alive. There were lots of cartoons. I think there was one Hanna-Barbera cartoon called The Jetsons, and it made the future look like, obviously, very consumerist, but at the same time you had all sorts of conveniences, and you got the impression that you didn't have to really work very hard in this place, because you had robots doing things and you had flying cars, as I say. It looked like a life of leisure. And I think this is what capitalism was offering the masses. Where capitalism is going to help, to bring us to a stage where we can put our feet up and relax. I think the moon landings have something to do with that as well, to instill confidence in the public. I think we should, at this point, perhaps get into the motives. Okay, let's say that it was a total fraud, the moon landing. Many here will agree with that. Some will not, but I think the majority will agree with that. Let's say it was a total scam from start to finish. What do you think are the motives behind it? I've probably listed a few there now, but Blackbird, what do you think were the motives behind such a massive hoodwinking of the public?
That is a very interesting question in the sense of, looking at the New World Order after World War II. And the Germans were far in front of everybody in aeronautical engineering, aerospace engineering, rocket fuel development, the V1s with von Braun's rocket, excuse me. So that technology, the electronics, they were just so far ahead of everyone else. And after the war, you saw this division between the Soviet Union and the United States getting the lion's share of the German scientists to come and work in their respective military and space programs, right? And one of the things I always find so bizarre with the history is during World War II, the United States was best buds with Great Britain, the UK, and the Soviet Union. And FDR referred to Joseph Stalin as Uncle Joe, and we've got to go help our comrades defeat those evil Germans and put them in their place and everything. But then suddenly in the 50s, we have the Cold War. And it's like, what started this split up between now our arch rival, Nazism's gone, fascism's gone, so now the new enemy of the West is communism, and the enemy of communism is the West. And I find it interesting that one of the things I was never taught in school was that in the USSR in June 1953, on the 27th, after Stalin had died or was assassinated, depending on who you want to ask, you had 2 Red Army divisions from Ural move into Moscow under Marshal Zhukov's command and basically seize the city. And in the process, they rounded up almost all of the Jewish NKVD members. So you had thousands of Jewish NKVD secret police that were killed in a night. So you just had this massive purge. And from that moment on, suddenly both London and New York were completely against the Soviet Union. So there had been this coup in the Soviet Union where they're going to continue to be communist, but there was obviously a management change. And this was when we started not only the nuclear race, but also the space race. And so there was all this money into the space race. And of course, the Soviets in 1957 did Sputnik, and that just was the official start of the space race, so that we have to be able to put things in orbit, send electronic radio signals. In 1958, the Mercury project was started, and that was, like I said, what my father was working on. In 1961, you had Ham do the first, critter, in space, as far as, the Americans, that was the space chimp. And then in 61, John F. Kennedy on May 25th did his moon challenge, where he says, I believe this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish, end quote. And then everything was going great, but then in 1961, Mercury sent up the second chimp, which was Enos, and the trajectory was a little bit more far-reaching. And my hypothesis was always with Enos, he went to see if you could permeate the Van Allen belt, and Enos came back and promptly died. And for the longest time, there was no explanation for Enos's mysterious death. And then over the years, it's kind of like 9/11 revisionism, where they just, every time you point out an inconsistency, they come up with a lie to fill in that gap. And so the latest official story now is that, Enos died from really, really bad dysentery, right? Or some such foolishness, and definitely not radiation poisoning. And then in February 62, John Glenn did the orbit, but made sure not to go into the Van Allen belt. And then in July 23rd, 62, the Telstar TV satellite is launched. And then in November, Kennedy is killed. And this is when I think the reality came in of there is a physical barrier. We cannot do what Kennedy said we had to do. So do we, just basically punt, call it quits, or do we form a smoke and mirror outfit to basically try to convince the Soviet Union that we are, surpassing them in the space race and make them spend all of their money trying to keep up with us, and as a way to bankrupt the Soviet Union by keeping up with a goalpost that doesn't really exist. It's a fictitious goalpost, but we're saying we achieved it. And then you have, like I said, all of this propaganda coming out of Hollywood. Like you mentioned, the Space Odyssey film, Lost in Space debuted in 65, Star Trek in 66, 67 you had The Invader. So there was all this push, all these movies coming about promoting the space race. And meanwhile, the Russians are trying to keep up, financially. So was it a way to bankrupt them? The other scenario is this, slime mold globo homo entity of, the International Chicken Swinger Union that wants every person on this planet completely enslaved. And the idea of putting in a surveillance satellite grid, military satellite surveillance system under the guise of money coming into the space program. So you got all this pipeline of money, billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars coming into all of these military space contractors, making them insanely rich, but also, military contracting is such a bizarre thing. When I used to work in that world, there's so much money changing hands, and so much of it is being paid for stuff that doesn't even exist. We called it window dressing. That, these projects that just sounded good, but there's no way they could ever work, but they would get all this money and it would get split up and it'd go everywhere. And then they say, oh, well, we're just going to discontinue that project, right? And this is, that money lender mentality, but also the idea of taking that money and investing it into this prison grid surveillance state, under the guise of a peaceful space program that's going to lead to colonization of the moon, space, and other planets. So you could sell it on the public so that they, will approve the money being spent, but then you siphon it off to put in basically this surveillance prison system instead. So those are just a couple of scenarios. Bankrupt the Soviet Union, or putting in a prison system, or both. So back to you. And making a lot of money in the process.
Yeah, we can't forget about the Benjamins. Alfred, what would you like to say here?
Yeah, Blackbird9 just summarized a lot of the important parts of the agenda of this whole operation. And yeah, like the prison system that is being installed here now. And the same, there's a continuation of that with the pandemic corona nonsense there. At the same, at the same time, not only extracting huge amounts of money, like which is a placeholder for real value, but in the process, the eternal poisoners of the wells have managed to cull large parts of our population, and a lot of them will still be dying in the near future. And another important aspect of that we're facing now is the fact, or let's go back to this, what we call the Second World War. I always call it the second chapter of the 3-chapter story of the chicken swingers trying to gain control over this planet Earth by controlling everything we believe to be reality, and having all the money, which is a placeholder for real value, in their hands, and then having us atomized, never understanding anything. And then they think this is then their planet for all eternity. But where they have erred in their judgment is that a planet of dumbed down, fearful, atomized human beings will in no way, shape, or form be able to create any real value that they can siphon off anymore. So this is the point where we're at right now, is getting this back under our control, dealing with the truth, no matter what it is, dealing with it and coming to some sensible, logical conclusions of how we're going to go into the future. And we either win or we die. There's no other alternative. And another very dangerous component of this diseased agenda or sick agenda that we're on, or bad programming that we're on right now, is that the chicken swingers always go by the mode of, after having sucked all the blood out of a certain population, they have to be physically exterminated, because it's like if you want to rob your enemy, you can rob him, and the best way to get away with it is, after you have completely robbed them, you kill them. And if you kill all of them, then there's nobody who's going to come and accuse you, because they're dead. They're too dead to accuse you. And another good mode of operation is to have those people you hire to help you rob them. They get to keep part of the booty. And that's what they did for the Germans, where, the Nazis, is all the Operation Paperclip, and there was, having all the, the brain power that was taken out of Germany and split up, between the Allies, or all lies, and the communists, was phenomenal. And now you got the same agenda playing out basically against the white race. So you get all the other races thinking, well, we're going to get the goods, so we're going to go along with this. But they don't realize that whoever is the best of the goyim after we are gone, hypothetically, if we lost, but we're not going to lose, if they did manage to get rid of us, then who's then the first in line as the best of the goyim? Probably the Japanese, or maybe the Chinese, or who knows. But this is what the humanity, our species, is now facing, is getting back in control of our own destiny. And the most natural organizational form of doing that, the healthiest form, is what we call National Socialism, where that's what the Third Reich, or Adolf Hitler, the Germans, had understood how to manage their own affairs, where they will retain control of their own money, which is the placeholder for their own value. And that is the reason why, under the evil Nazis, why they had achieved a level of happiness and harmony and wealth, if you will, like we've never seen before on this planet. And that had the chicken swingers allowed, not defeated the Germans, then the Germans would have been a role model for every other peoples on this planet. And where I gain all my hope and confidence that we are going to win is when I see the quality of the work being put together now, whether it's out of Australia, whether it's out of Britain, or the productions of getting people to understand what has happened to us is a quality we have never seen before. So that's what gives me great hope. And no amount of censoring will prevent this from eventually reaching each and every single last individual on this planet. And yeah, that's where I see us right now. So back to you then.
Thanks for that. I'll bring on Brizer now in a sec. Yeah, I came across a video a while back. It was an Irish YouTuber, and he was saying that he was getting angry because of people like us who maybe put question marks over the whole moon landing scenario. And he was adamant that, yes, we did land on the moon. And when asked why nobody has been put on the moon, I think since the 70s, which is a long time, he said something like how it was, space travel took a huge psychological toll on the astronauts, and that's why nobody has landed on the moon in so long. But yes, we certainly did land on the moon. Before I bring in Brizer, what I'll get round to next, I'll ask you for perhaps some inconsistencies you've seen in relation to the videos of the moon landing. There's a famous phone call. I think is it Nixon? He phones, operator, put me through to the moon, And I think Blackbird, you could shine some light on that, given your background in telecommunications, etc. So yeah, I'll bring on Brizer. Brizer, go ahead.
Yeah, good question as to why would they pull something like this off, and what's the what's to be achieved here? Why would they do this? Now, like the 60s was a very tumultuous decade when you think about it, because you had the whole Kennedy thing going on. There was assassinations going on all over the place, and the Vietnam War was going on, and then of course the Cold War was going on, and there was us against them, the pesky commies, and a lot of people are led to believe that it was a kind of a battle between us and them, who could do it first type of thing. And I'm always kind of when you look at a rocket, it looks like a phallic symbol, doesn't it? And it's kind of like, well, whose dick is bigger? Who's got the bigger dick here? That's what it kind of comes down to, really, doesn't it? And but what I really think why they pulled this off was they thought they just knew they could get away with it, and it's all again perpetuating a lie. Let's just lie to the whole world, tell everybody that we went up there to that thing that's called the moon up there. I don't even know is it a rock? I don't even know if it's a rock. A lot of people say it's plasma or something. We're told it's 220,000 miles away. Well, who measured that? How do we know it's that far away? Because sometimes the moon seems very close and then it seems very far away. Sometimes you can see the moon during the day, and you can actually see through it because you can see the sky behind it. It's like, so what is that thing up there? We don't know, but we got so-called experts telling us, oh yeah, that's a rock up there, and it's just hanging up there in the sky, and we went there, and it was just a big lie, and they just love lying to us, and they're just getting away with it. And I think, and they'll pump how many billions of dollars into this because they don't care. They print the money anyway. And let's see how many gullible goyim will fall for this. And sadly, most people do. And they do this time and time again. And we've seen it. So that's what I think why they did it. It's all about control, and you can control people by lying to them, by saying we've got experts and scientists and whatever who can prove this. But then when you ask them for proof, they call you a denier, or shut up. And then if you go a bit too far, then suddenly you're going to get knocks on the door, and you're suddenly a hater or a denier or whatever, and they'll throw you into the clink for simply asking questions. And how many people have been thrown into the clink, and Alfred is one there, who dared to ask questions about a certain event in World War II, and his sister Monica as well. And how dare you ask questions? We've heard the saying, like, seek, it's in the Bible, seek the truth and the truth shall set you free. And it's not that we will get to the truth. I think it's the journey of finding the truth, because if we embark on that journey to find the truth, and we start asking questions, we will come to our own truth. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. They can think whatever they want. I don't really care what other people think or what they believe in. That's up to them. As far as I'm concerned, the whole moon landings was a complete hoax. The whole event in World War II is, as far as I'm concerned, until I see evidence otherwise to prove me wrong, was a hoax. 9/11 was a complete con job. All of these things are lies, huge, massive lies. And the people who are pushing this, I think, just get off on it, and they like it. And this is how they can control people. And they'll either use fear, they use propaganda, they use whatever methods they can to get people on board. And once people believe in this stuff, they have them in the palm of their hands, and they can do anything. And again, the last 4 years has really kind of cemented that, because you just saw what they did. They told people that there was some deadly virus flying around. It was going to kill millions and millions of people, and the whole world locked down. And I knew from the beginning that this was a scam. I just knew. And I had a feeling that they could pull something like this off. That this is something they could do. And they did. And I could not believe that the amount of people who fell for this, even though I tried to explain to them, what this was about, that how can you prove that this is actually real? What's going on here? And they were going, no, the experts, trust the science, trust the science. Trust the experts, That's all we got. And it was constant 24/7 bullshit. And it was on, it was on mainstream media, it was on social media, it was everyone's got a smartphone now. So back in the day, before smartphones and whatever, that's maybe back in the 60s and 70s, a lot of people would not have fallen for this type of thing. But now, because everyone's got social media and smartphones, they've got news, so-called news, at their fingertips. And everyone's connected to the matrix, and everyone is buying into whatever crap that they're pumping out. And that's why you have to just step back and kind of go, hold on a minute now. And you start asking some questions here, and you have to ask for proof. There's a maxim of law: the burden of proof lies with the one who makes the claim. These people are making a claim. So this happened, we did this, whatever. Climate change, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing this on Twitter. I ask a lot of people, and these climate change people are saying, oh, the world is burning up. I said, show me your proof. Show me your controlled experiments that you have done, not what other people have done, what you have done. Where's your truth? And nobody comes back to me on that. Nobody. Because they're bullshitting. People are just repeating. It's just repeaters all the way through. Nobody can actually come out and give me solid, concrete evidence of this. So therefore, I have to say, well, you're talking absolute shit then. There you go. Sorry, I can't buy this. And then we're being accused of being deniers and haters and racists and whatever, you know. I'm done with it. I'm saying, okay, off you go. This is my truth. This is what I think is going on. I don't know what's going up there in the sky. I haven't a clue what's happening, and it doesn't really particularly bother me too much. But I know the narrative that's been spun is a complete crock of shit, and I'm not buying this stuff anymore. And I think most people, a lot of people now who are waking up are also questioning a lot of things, and I think you just have to look at it that way. What do you know is true? What is truth? What is it? And we think that truth is what the experts tell us is true. Instead of discovering your own truth, and by questioning things and seeking the truth, you will figure out the truth, and it will set you free. Because I found myself, by questioning all of these things, it's very liberating, because now I just do not give a crap about a lot of this stuff. I don't care about what the media tells. I don't care about politics anymore. You know, what's going on, what Trump is doing here, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's all noise. It's just noise, and I just walk away from it. It's all crap. And when you walk away from that, it is extremely liberating. And you feel that you have, I suppose it's a kind of a spiritual thing in many ways. It's very uplifting. And you can kind of navigate your way through this life without being pestered by these liars and deceivers. And as I said earlier, I can't wait to see these pieces of shit going down, because it will happen. You know, you cannot keep a big lie going. I mean, it'll go for a long time, but eventually that's going to crumble. And we're getting there now. There's an awakening going on, I think. Well, I do see it, and I'm seeing more people like who I thought were complete normies, zombies, you know, who are now waking up and questioning things. I mean, they don't know what we know, but at least they're beginning to start to question things. So the so-called powers that be are worried now, and that the lie it's coming to an end, and they're going to be called out. And I can't wait to see that day when these people are pulled in and dealt with accordingly. So back to you.
What is it they say? If you tell a lie, a big enough lie, people will believe it. Because they start thinking, why would someone or some people go out of their way to tell such an extravagant lie? So it's easier just to believe the lie. Right, I want to move on to the inconsistencies in the moon landing. So if you guys have any inconsistencies you've noticed, let me know. I'll go through the list, and then I'll ask the chat if they have any final questions before we finish off this stream. So we start with you, Blackbird. Have you noticed any inconsistencies, including the phone call, the long distance phone call from the President of the United States?
Oh no, none whatsoever. No. And that's you're Brizer, and you're spot on about the big lie and our trusting nature, that we had no reason to doubt what the media was telling us. You know, Americans especially have this bizarre notion that you can't say something on television or put it in a newspaper or a magazine unless it's true. And that is such a naive view of American culture, that you can't say something on television unless it's true, and that's the thing. It's like, yes, you can, and they do all the time. And so you don't have a reason to not believe the story you're told. And so you just go along with it and you become a repeater that, oh, well, this is the news. I heard it on television from my trusted newscaster. Uncle Walter Cronkite would never lie to us, right? He was the guy that was there, all through the space program, if you remember. He also was there bringing the body counts from Vietnam every night, in our living room to see, if we were winning the Vietnam War or not, because Uncle Walter Cronkite would be giving us the body count numbers. But once you give up the benefit of the doubt and start questioning and start applying critical questioning to this, then things start falling apart. And like I said, because of my father's role in the space program and that I was, thought I was going that way, it was part of my sacred cow of, the great human experiment that we have achieved this greatness in my lifetime. The poets only dreamed about going to those twinkly lights in the heavens, right? And we did it. And then when you started questioning it, it's like, well, this doesn't really add up. The physics doesn't match. And I think the punch in the gut that literally almost made me throw up, in the same manner of hearing the magic cell phone calls on 9/11 that were physically impossible from those airplanes going at those velocities at those altitudes, that our technology at the time for cell phones. And I was teaching things like, my clients were like Motorola, Ericsson, the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, all the military intelligence agencies, naval intelligence. I was teaching where we are in these technologies because we were working on this convergence project of, third generation telephony, where we were combining the, computer networks with the telephone networks and making one big network. That was what third generation telephony was about. And, I was just like, that's physically impossible. That doesn't work. And being in a class of like NSA bright, the 20 somethings best and brightest, and you're sitting there after 9/11 explaining signaling of cell phone calls and handoff procedures between towers and the setups of the signaling and all these factors. And you're just like, if anybody in the world should understand why those 9/11 cell phone calls are impossible, it should be you guys. But y'all are just buying into it, that they happened, even though somewhere in your brain that it's physically impossible. You are going along with it because you have been conditioned from the horrors of that traumatic programming of 9/11, watching those buildings fall continuously on CNN. It was just a loop there for 2 years of, let's reenact the trauma of 9/11 to get your programming right. And so, when you would bring up the cell phone call, people would get hostile. And so with the moon landing stuff, and this was, after the 2008, when I finally came to grips with the physical impossibility of the 6 gorillion, listen to the phone call from President Nixon and the Apollo crew. And I thought I was going to throw up, because you've got Neil Armstrong and President Nixon. Nixon's in the Oval Office of the White House, and they're on, this telephone, and it's like a landline to landline conversation. There is no signal latency. Right? And latency, for the newbies, is a concept in communications. Funny humans, we expect people to respond to us in a certain amount of time. I say something and you respond, and if you don't respond in that amount of time, I'm going to talk over you. And so latency in phones basically acceptable latency for regular business class phones, just pick up the phone, call somebody, is 150 milliseconds. If you go over 150 milliseconds to around 300 milliseconds, then this is kind of like when you're on Skype and you get a little congestion and you start talking over each other because, the other person hasn't quite finished, but you think they have, etc. So you start talking over each other. So 300 milliseconds is when you start noticing it. Over 300 milliseconds, it starts getting annoying. And if you've ever used a satellite phone, like the tall or the high satellites, you have to start using radio speak like you're on a ham radio or a walkie-talkie, where you basically say what you're going to say and then say over so the other person doesn't talk over you. That's how bad the latency are on just satellite phones, even low Earth orbit satellites, the LEOs. If you do the simple calculations of how far is it to the moon, how far does it take a light signal, a radio wave, to travel from the moon to the Earth? You come up with, one way, if you look at the speed of light and the distance to the moon being about 384,000 kilometers or 238 miles, it comes out to about a second and a half one way. So just, you say something, it's going to take a second and a half to get there. The person hears it, and then they're going to respond, and it's going to take a second and a half for them to hear you, right? So you should have had about 3 seconds of delay between what Nixon said and what Neil Armstrong said, and then, working around that kind of delay. It wasn't there. They were talking in real time. And this is one of the things I loved about the movie Capricorn 1 was the NASA scientist who figures out the telemetry times don't match up. It's the same science. He was getting signals that were obviously coming from just miles away from when they were being received, and not from, in the movie it was from Mars, right? And so he's like, this is physically impossible, and nobody's understanding what I'm saying. And this is how I was after 9/11, when I'm like, people would talk about, those heroes with those 9/11 calls, they were great heroes, and especially United 93. And I'm like, it's physically impossible. And they're like, you're just crazy. You're a tinfoil hatter. You're worse than a Holocaust denier. And I'm like, no, it's called physics. And so that was the big one to me, that it was just the gut punch. And then I guess afterwards, the same thing, the aluminum foil on the lunar module, with the later missions, they had the little go-kart, moon rover, and there's no place to store it inside the landing craft. And then, when you start picking it apart, it doesn't work. The shielding, there's no way that craft could have passed through the Van Allen belt without them all dying from horrible radiation poisoning. In my view, I'm not a doctor, let me say that. But those were just some of the main ones that just like, okay, I'm done. This didn't happen. My father's probably going to hate me forever, but sorry, Dad, I was wrong about the Apollo missions. Back to you.
Thanks for that, Blackbird. Alfred, have you seen any inconsistencies? Perhaps maybe
Yes.
a few sparrows flying by
Yeah.
Armstrong or something like that.
We all have seen that famous photograph of the first step in the lunar dust. Neil Armstrong, when he put his foot down in this fine dust. And then they always like to say, and this will remain there forever and ever. But if anybody who has ever used one of those blowers to, let's say, bring the leaves off his lawn, and blow it out into the other corner of the yard or something. Now, how is, with a lunar lander, let's just say that the official story was real, comes down, there would not be any fine dust anywhere near the place where this thing comes down on the moon. And yet when Neil Armstrong climbs out down that ladder with a spacesuit that wouldn't never fit through the door that he just came through, but he climbs down the ladder and then he puts his feet down, and the fine sand, fine dust on the moon takes a picture of that, and that picture, we've all seen that on covers of books and whatnot. So that they can, when the NASA explains to us how this dust managed to stay fine and so nice in that spot right beneath the lunar lander, then we can start to rethink, if they really landed on the moon. And there's just so many points. And in hindsight, after these lies all collapse, you'll see that nobody's going to admit openly that they ever believed it, because they are so infantile, so nonsensical. And I mean, I admit I fell for it, because I just couldn't have imagined being lied to on such a scale. And yet this is the reality that we live in. So yeah, that's the only point I wanted to bring up there. We could go on for hours bringing up all kinds of details. Oh, another thing is, where are the stars in all the photos? Well, they decided back then that if they include stars in these in the studio scenes here, they will never be able to put them that accurately there, that they won't be like exposed. So they'll just say, oh, it's the lighting conditions. You can't see the lighting conditions. But what utter nonsense. I mean, it's just pure utter nonsense. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks for that. There was a comment a few minutes ago. I'll just read it out if it's still here. Let me see. Yeah. This is from Humans A. He says, I like the part where the lander lifts off from the moon and the unmanned camera left behind pans up to follow the launch. And then he says clockwork apparently, or something. Anyway, I thought that was very funny. Right. Brizer, any inconsistencies you came across when you looked into the moon landings?
Yeah, I mean, Blackbird and Alfred kind of summed a lot of them up. I mean, for me, again, when Armstrong was getting out, who was filming him, and again, that famous footprint in the sand, it's still, allegedly, it's still there. It's still there. Neil Armstrong's footprint is still up there on the moon, The moon buggy, they're driving around his moon. How did they bring that up there? Again, as the commenter said, when it was taking off again, there was a cameraman left behind, The flag, the flag of it, there was no wind. It was just static, and they were bouncing around the moon because they said the gravity was less than it is on the Earth. And you notice that it is always dark. Now here we are on Earth, and we have the sun there that shines down on Earth, and we have daytime and we got nighttime. And during the day, it's bright. But on the moon, it's always dark. But yet the moon is up there. Allegedly, it's closer to the sun. So how come it's not bright up there? And yeah, there's just again the Nixon phone call, as well as Blackbird said about this latency. I know even to this day, even on my mobile phone, I try and call someone who's like 10, 15 miles away, and they say, oh, it's a bad signal. I can't hear you. Can you call me back or whatever? And yet Nixon was able to talk to the boys up on the moon perfectly clearly, no problem. I mean, it's unbelievable how people fall for this. But the thing is, at the time, we all did. And we have to kind of question ourselves, like, how did we fall for this nonsense? How did we do that? What, it shows you the levels of deception that are being used here against us, that they can spin a yarn and we fall for it time and time again, hook, line, and sinker. And it's happened all down through history. And when I think it's coming to an end now, because, as I said, it's a big lie, and it can only go on for so long. It's got a time limit, and it's unraveling, and it's great to see that it's unraveling, and people are questioning things now. But the moon landings, and as I said, going back to that Capricorn 1 movie, that showed you right there. They showed you in that movie how they can pull off a stunt like this. They showed us. Hollywood are very good at doing that, aren't they? They're very good at telling us things But we think that this is a great sci-fi movie, or this is a great adventure, and but nobody's actually seeing behind that. They're not scraping back, and looking at what's really going on here. That movie will tell you, anybody who believes that we landed on the moon, I would say to please watch that film, because you will see exactly how they do it. And they do it just with moon landings, they do it at everything. It's the same with the whole scamdemic. They get people on board. Either they're totally brainwashed idiots, or they are being controlled and manipulated, or blackmailed, or whatever, or threatened. They will go along with it just to keep their jobs. I mean, I have to really question a lot of doctors now about this whole scamdemic and why they went along with this, and not at least ask some questions. And then even administering these jabs, or these cocktails of poison that they stuck in people's arms. Did anybody even question what was in that syringe? Nobody did. I asked so many people who took the jab. I said, did you ask any of them what's in there? No. Why didn't you? Well, I trust the science. I trust the experts. But if I came up to a friend of mine and I gave him a glass of a liquid and said, drink this, this is good for you, this is safe, this is wonderful, the first thing they would say to me, because I'm not an expert, is, well, what is this? What are you? I said, trust me, it's good for you. Drink it down. I said, no, I won't. They wouldn't do it. But they'll do it for the experts. They'll do it for the experts. It's not just astounding that people will do that. Again, going back to the inconsistencies, there's just so many of them. There's lots of documentaries and things you can see online about all the inconsistencies of the moon landings, and it's laughable, really, when you look at it. It is really laughable. They are playing one big gigantic joke on humanity, and they're loving it. And this again is saying, you lie to people, you can control people. And that's what it's all about. And that's what they're doing right now. And as I said, I think the lie is becoming, unraveling. And let's see where the dice fall right now. But let's keep it going, guys. Keep asking questions. Do not believe anything you hear. Question absolutely everything. Because from where I am standing right now, after being down this rabbit hole for years, since about 2008, when I kind of really started looking into all this stuff, I've come now to the realization that pretty much everything we've been told about anything is most of it is, again, a crock of shit, basically. And I'm not going to, unless I see solid, concrete proof. I mean, even let's talk about the Holocaust, for example, right? So-called Holocaust, right? If I could see evidence, I mean, I wasn't there. None of us were there, okay? But if I was, if I saw clear, concrete evidence that there was gas chambers and all these, poor Jews were rolled into these camps and gassed to death, and there was concrete evidence, I would go, oh, shit, that's awful, that's terrible, right? But there's no evidence to show that, none, anywhere. And people have been asking these questions for a long time, and look what's happened. And Alfred there is a good example. He was sent to the Gulag for 5 or 6 years. Thankfully, he's out now, and he's stronger than ever. Because you can't beat it. Because once you seek the truth, it will set you free. And that's what we're all about here. We have to seek that truth. We might never find it, but we're getting there. And once we go on that journey, embark on that journey, we will discover things for ourselves and let other people believe what they want. I'll as far as I'm concerned, most of the things that we've been told about stuff that's happened in the past is absolute nonsense. And, the history books are written by the victors, aren't they? So we never hear the other side of the story, do we? We never hear about the Rhine Meadows, situation after World War II. We never heard about that in our history class. Never heard about it. Where a million or so Germans were put into a field and left to die. We never heard about that. But we heard about the old poor 6 million. We never heard about the Holodomor in the Ukraine, right? We never heard about that, or the Armenian genocide, or even the so-called Irish famine. We were told that we were given another completely concocted story about that. That was a complete land grab by the crown, and but you can't touch that. So this is where we are, and we just have to absolutely question everything and hold their feet to the fire and say, okay, you're making a claim that this happened, this is going on. Show me the evidence. Show me the proof. Show me if you're a scientist, controlled experiments. I want to see it. Because other than that, I'm not buying it. End of story. So back to you.
All right. So, guys, we're going to finish off this stream now. I will throw this up to whoever wants to answer it. It's not really a question, but it's a statement by Murder by Maestro. He says the Kubrick involvement is the most interesting aspect in my opinion. So does anyone want to touch that? Kubrick seemingly involved in the moon landing.
Yes, Stanley Kubrick he had the ability to do that, and that guaranteed him all the resources that he could possibly dream of, and that's why he became the producer of things like 2001: Space Odyssey and so forth. Yeah, he was, and then he didn't want to take that lie with him into his grave, and he had in a video he confessed to having been the producer of that and said it must be kept under lock and key. I think it was for 15 years after his death, and I saw that video for the first time. I think it was 2014 or something like that. So. He must have died, I assume, then around the year 2000, and then it was, published after it was kept away for that period of time to protect his family, sort of thing. And also, if you look at the astronauts, like the so-called astronauts, like any of them, and they are asked publicly, well, what about the moon landing? And they will always evade it or run away from it, or I mean, they are not happy people. So all those people involved, it might have provided them some fame at that time, but it was a false fame, and it made them very unhappy. And that's how this whole thing is going down now. The chicken swingers, who have been the rulers of this planet now for so long, thinking they can ascend the throne of and rule this planet forever. No, they are going to experience what they have experienced so many times in the past. The Jews have been rounded up and neutralized over 1,000 times in European geographies. So one more time is no big deal. It's the scale this time that is unique. We've never had such a massive, like the time that they have been able to take it to this point has been way too long. Like we should never have allowed them to take it this far. There should have been a revolution after they killed John F. Kennedy. There should have been a revolution after the USS Liberty incident. And if 9/11 didn't do it, that's what gave them the audacity to pull this COVID corona show over our eyes. And now people have been injected with this stuff, and people will now, as they wake up, also realize their time is very limited to settle the score. Many are dying. I mean, my cousin was very politically correct and got a vaccination and died 2 days after her second injection. That is what I call murder, okay? She doesn't have time, doesn't have a voice anymore. And at no point in time was my cell as small and dark and permanent as the coffin that my politically correct cousin got to move into 2 days after her second shot. So all those people who did get their COVID shot, think about it. How are you going to settle the score before you die? Will you have the energy? Will you have the, the fitness to do anything? I mean, start thinking about it, because you have been slated to die, to make space for the invaders who are just itching to move into your home, to your space, and so forth. And this is what we have to deal with. Okay, over to you.
Right, there's another question here from Murder by Maestro. What of the ISS? Personally, I think all that is fake too, showing the zero gravity water, etc. All CGI. Does anyone want to touch that?
ISIS, Israeli Secret Services or something like that, Yeah.
No, I think it's International Space Station.
The space
the ISIS.
station.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're talking about not ISIS, but ISS. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Again, I don't know. None of us know. They say they put satellites up into the sky. What are they? A lot of people say they're hot weather balloons, whatever. Right? That could be true. Seemingly, NASA, one of its biggest expenditures is helium, which is used to put up balloons into the sky, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, and what was the previous question betwixt about? Oh, Stanley Kubrick, yeah, like 2001: Space Odyssey. Again, seemingly while he was filming that movie. Sorry, some dogs barking in the background, but.
It sounds like they're not fans of Stanley Kubrick.
Hold on. Okay.
Right. Mute yourself.
I'll come back. I'll come back to you on that.
Sure.
Okay?
We're going to finish in a few minutes anyway. Right. Okay. So let's see what else we have here, guys. I think we're gonna wrap up now. Let's see. There's something about HAL. Let's see what this is here. IBM worked with the Nazis. What's this? They make their counting machine. The original script of Space Odyssey had HAL computer named IBM. Conspiracy confirmed, right? And I think that's it. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on. Blackbird, if you want to give any parting shots before you go, and Alfred, and I will put, if people check back later, there will be links to the guys' Twitter or whatever they have will be in the description of this video. Also, hit the like for this video, guys, and share it around on whatever, Telegram, wherever. That's if it's still up by this time tomorrow, right?
I'm back, guys. Sorry about that.
You're okay, Brizer. You're okay. We're finishing
somebody
up
at the
now.
door. All I have to say is I got great guard dogs, because somebody comes to the door and they're ready to leap into action, which is good. Keep these scoundrels away from my door.
Right.
Good
No
protection.
worries.
But anyway,
right.
Going back to just to finish my point about Kubrick, right? Yeah, he did 2001: Space Odyssey, and a lot of people say that while he was filming that, he also filmed the moon landings. I think he was between. He filmed it in London, the Pinewood Studios in London, and also in the States. I think somewhere in Houston or whatever. And then if you look at The Shining, you ever seen that film? He did The Shining as well. There's lots of little drops in that movie as well about the moon landings too. If you go and look at it, I can't remember it now. I'd have to look at it again. But there's lots of drops in there about the moon landings, that it was all a complete hoax. So the Kubrick influence is interesting on that. He obviously knew what was going on, and he just put it out there a bit just to kind of see if people would catch on, and the people are kind of beginning to catch on right now. So that's it. Yeah. What else? I can't remember I can't remember else where I was. But I'm trying to talk about something else too. I can't remember. But anyway, I'll pass it back.
Okay. Thanks for that, Brizer. Right. So, parting shots. Start with you, Blackbird, and then we'll go on to Alfred, and finally Brizer, and then we'll finish up this stream. So go ahead, Blackbird.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this, gentlemen. This is very good. I enjoyed this thoroughly. So, I guess when you were putting together the dots of the big lies Yeah, they got away with this, and they had the chutzpah to try this, and then they had the chutzpah to try this, they had the chutzpah to try this. And I think it's incredibly telling that we all know Neil Armstrong's famous line, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And we also know that the first man on the moon was Neil Armstrong's cameraman. Uh, but that's another story. Oh, the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about the footprints, if you look at the famous footprints when he steps, the tread on the boot has a horizontal pattern. But when you look at the space suit that's in the Space Museum, that's supposedly what he was wearing, the boot has a circular tread pattern on it. So that was another big tell. But the line of that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, I find it incredibly creepy that Bibi Nutty Yahoo, that crazy Israeli, he keeps a trophy on his desk of a syringe, a COVID-19 syringe, and the plaque underneath his trophy reads, one small shot for man, one giant step for the health of us all. So you can read into that what you will about the clot shot, Jew jab, death jab, and their plans of controlling the world, and that they just see all these things as stepping stones to their dominance of the planet, and that we need to stop them. Like Alfred was saying, we are in an existential war. That if we don't stand up to these people, we will go extinct, because this is they want us gone so they can rule the planet in peace, and with them as gods on the planet, right? So. Controlling the narrative, we've got to take that away from them, because when they're in control, it's like the Marxists. They're going to say the truth is whatever we need it to be at the time. And when we change it, you better get in lockstep, because if you don't, we will destroy you. And I'm one of those people, Mr. Alfred, we've all paid the price of standing up to this power, but at the same time, we are being effective in tearing down their false narratives. And shows like this really, I think, help when we're coming together from all over the world and noticing patterns that we can all agree on. So that's all I have for this. So back to you.
Thanks, Blackbird. Okay, we were always at war with East Asia. Alfred, go ahead.
Yeah, the Jews themselves have quoted, there's quotes from Jews that sum up their response that we can expect now just by listening to these quotes from different Jews. One of them said that if the Goyim knew what we are doing, they would kill us openly on the street. They know that. And another one is Judaism is not a religion, it is a code of conduct for psychopathy. Every single aspect of their behavior feeds that narrative. Like, for example, the fact that a 3-year-old non-Jewish girl is ideal for having sexual intercourse with, and then it needs to be killed because it seduced the holy man, the rabbi. Anybody who is able to do that is a good has the right code of conduct for doing what the Jews do. So once we understand that and understand how this reaction, how people are now all waking up, the later people are in the cycle of waking up, the higher the price to be accepted with with a swarm, with a new herd. The herd changes direction, and the sheep that notice it later in time will do anything to join the herd that's changed direction. And that's what we're seeing now. That's what I was saying before. The quality of the work that people are producing now to get people to wake up is a quality I have never seen before. It is a quality we dreamed of, before. And now people are producing it. So they're trying to censor us. But I say, good luck. Every time in the past when they've censored something, it seems to come back a little bit later, 10 times stronger, and everybody wants to know it. And another thing is that the Jews really ought to know is how do you make something make it desirable for people? You try to make it scarce, okay? They did that with diamonds, keep them real scarce, drive up the price. They are doing that with truth, but now that people know they've been lied to, they are just really thirsting for the clear truth. And this thirst is being quenched by really fine productions. So all these things are just nothing more than indicators of how this biological response is progressing. And I can say we are on track. It's all going according to plan, and the plan being nature's laws, or God's laws, call it whatever you want. But these laws, nothing can stop this process now, any more than you can stop a vase if you let it fall, and you can take a picture of it when it's like a half a centimeter off the ground and it's still perfectly intact, but you know that a split second later it's going to be in 1,000 pieces. And this is what's happening to their death matrix. Their death matrix is now imploding in on itself, and then we'll see how they fare after it implodes. And that's why we can also expect people from the other side coming over to us with all kinds of good information. So if I was a Jew, I would come out right now and I would put in writing everything I know, and I'd say, look, I'm not one of those, and here's the proof, here's the evidence, here's my confession, if you will. And then I hope that you will I hope that counts when I get judged, sort of thing. That's how I look at it. So that's the end of my speech.
Okay, and Brizer.
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Great discussion. A lot of people are interested in it, and as I said before, this is a good place to start for newbies if you're questioning things. The moon landing hoax, because as far as I know, is a massive hoax, and all the other hoaxes that have followed on from that. I'm sure there's previous hoaxes before. As I said, you got to question absolutely everything, and embark on your own journey to seek the truth. And yeah, you will get lambasted. You will be isolated. You will lose a lot of friends. I mean, I have had many friends, and I speak to maybe 2 of them now. I used to have, a big coterie of friends. They don't want to come near me right now, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. It's not a big issue. Life goes on. And I actually feel better because of it, because at least I know what's going on, and I'm not worried about this type of thing. Once you realize that we are living in a bullshit system, you can just pull yourself out of it, wash yourself down, and walk off and start again, try to do something else. Life is not meant to be a constant challenge, a constant kind of, oh Jesus, I see this a lot of truthers. They're all trying to, sorry, dog barking again there, but they're all trying to look at this. Oh, look what's going on here. Look what's going on there. Yeah, it's going on, but it doesn't mean that's going to happen, and it doesn't mean that why expend your energy looking into this stuff. We're only here for what, 80 odd years, if we're lucky, 80 odd years, right? Enjoy it and call out the bullshit when you see it, and you can kind of laugh at it in many ways. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people sadly succumb to the lies, and they're no longer here. As Alfred saying sadly about your relative there who died after the second jab. I had a good friend of mine in school, a good buddy of mine, and he took the booster shot, and a month later he was dead from an aggressive cancer, and blood clots. And I at his funeral, I said it to a lot of people. I said it was because of the jab. I said, oh no, it was dead. But he was a fit man, and then suddenly he just dies of this aggressive cancer. And I know this because I didn't, unfortunately, I never got to meet him before he died, but I called him on the phone about a week before he died, and I asked him, I said, did you take the jabs? He says, yeah, I took the booster shot. And I went, I think that's what did it. And he went, oh shit. And so the anti-vaxxers were right then. That's what he said to me, because he didn't believe that. But then I said to him, But then it was too late for him. You see, it was too late for him. And that really kind of hit me, you know. There's a guy I really kind of got on well with, used to have a go and have a few beers with him. And, you know, he's a good guy. And he's now gone. And I know about 5 or 6 other people, neighbors, whatever, where I used to live in Dublin, you know, where I grew up, gone as well. I think I warned about 30 people about this Jew jab, right? And nobody listened to me, and 6 out of 30 are dead. So, you know, this is what we have to kind of look at here, you know. You have to question absolutely everything, and don't buy into whatever the experts say or the media say or the politicians say. They're all talking absolute shite, complete, total shite. And once you realize that, you can just step out of it, get on with your own life, enjoy it, and we can be all right. And I think there's a good thing happening now. A lot of people are waking up now, and as I said, we don't know how it's all going to pan out eventually, but I think it's all going to come down at some point, and I think it's going to come down soon. And I can't wait. I can't wait to be here to see it happen. It's going to be great, and it's great to be on here with Alfred, who spent 5 years in the Gulag for simply asking questions, and his sister Monica, who's in jail for a year or two as well, and Graham Hart and other people, Alison Shablow, all these other people who did the same thing, simply asking questions, and they've come out stronger and better because of it. So this is good. This is great to see this. That, you know, no matter what they do to us, push us down, we keep coming back. We're not lying down. We never give up. You know, keep asking questions. Never give up. We're here for our duration on this realm that we live in, and we're going to call them out. We're going to call out these liars, these deceivers, and eventually we will win. We mightn't be here to see it, but I hope that one day we will win this, and I think we are. I think we're on that road, and I agree with Alfred. This is a great time now to be alive right now. It's I see a lot of positive stuff. You know, a good few years ago, it was a lot of negativity. Oh, we're doomed. We're you know, it's a lost cause. But now I'm seeing a lot of good things happening. Yes, there's still people who are being pulled off into different rabbit holes, and we might disagree with them on this, that, and the other. But that doesn't matter. Let them on their own journey. I'm on my journey. Alfred's on his journey. Blackbird's on journey, and betwixt you're on your journey. We're all on our journey to figure out this nonsense. We're asking questions, and we ain't giving up. We're here. We're going to get on with our lives, and to the rest of them, up yours. I'm done. So thanks, guys. Great to talk with you, and I'll leave it at that.
All right. Yeah, I should say that we should bear in mind the shortness of life and the idea that someone would dare to put a patent on your life. You should always be willing to ask questions, especially the difficult questions. All right, I will finish up this stream by saying the following. We should remain grounded, but at the same time, we should indulge in these 4 words of wisdom: to infinity and beyond.